Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to another video. Today we are finally doing here the deck profile for Uria. This is the pure variants, the version where last time I did the Raviel deck and then I did the Hamon deck, and afterwards I just didn't do any deck profiles whatsoever on Sacred Beast. I immediately just moved on to all of these other things like Project E, the ban list analysis, and even the Magistus deck, and you guys must have been wondering where the Uria deck was. Well, here it is. It's completely different than the Hamon or the Raviel deck. Both of those decks actually were really different, Raviel being the focus on actually going for OTKs with the Shimmering Scraper of course, and Hamon being the main focus of going first to set up a board filled with negates. But both those decks primarily focused on the actual main playstyle of Sacred Beast itself, at least the version that was intended from the structure deck. However, what I will have to say here is that the Uria deck definitely strays in a different path. It takes such a unique variation to the deck itself, and you're definitely going to have to try out a lot of things to actually make this deck work. So without further ado, let's just get started and show you everything, because this is definitely going to be so different from the other ones. Of course, I would also like to remind you guys to like, share, comment and subscribe because it really matters. And with that being said, let's just begin. So the obvious ones is going to be the 3 copies of Uria. This is the main focus of our entire deck. You have to play 3 of them, and believe it or not, we're not actually playing Raviel or Hamon at all. We're not even playing a single copy of it. So you guys might be surprised about that, because in the Hamon variant and in the Raviel variant, you're playing at least 1 copy of every single Sacred Beast. So what is the difference with the Uria deck in this case? Well, in the Uria deck, you're focusing so much on just Uria alone that you do not have the space to accompany the other Sacred Beasts, which is definitely unfortunate, but at the same time, it does take away something that is, I guess, too common in the deck anyway, and it focuses more on a variation of the deck itself, being that the focus is now Uria. Now I am still playing here 3 copies of Dark Beckoning Beast and 3 copies of Chaos Summoning Beast. They are both really crucial cards, and I think they'll always make the deck work in a really fast and efficient manner. Beckoning Beast will search out any Sacred Beast support, so you're not really going to be playing any less than 3 copies of it. It's just a good card that you really have to play in the deck. Same thing for Chaos Summoning Beast. It's so easy to summon out Uria directly from your hand by tributing the Chaos Summoning Beast. Not to mention, it could banish itself from the graveyard, search your Fallen Paradise to draw your cards to protect your Uria on the field. So why not play 3 copies of both? They're really amazing. Of course, that also means we're playing here 2 copies of Dark Summoning Beast. Now, one difference I want to actually point out is that the Dark Summoning Beast will only focus on the second effect. You will never use the first effect in this particular circumstance, in this particular deck at all. The first effect will hold you back. The second effect, on the other hand, will add the Uria to your hand, allowing your Chaos Summoning Beast to tribute itself to summon that Uria from your hand that was added from the Dark Summoning Beast. So it's definitely fantastic, and this is more so kind of like tribute fodder or fodder in general for the opening of the Spirit Gates. Next, we're going to be playing here 3 copies of Curry Bandit. This is a new addition to the deck. You guys might be very surprised, but you could essentially just tribute this card and allow yourself to mill out your deck as much as possible. And don't worry about milling out Uria, it's not too big an issue anyway. You'll most likely be able to search it really early on. The Curry Bandit just does the job of actually getting your traps to the graveyard. Now on to spells. You guys might be surprised to see that opening of the Spirit Gates is down to 2, so obviously you could see that with the Uria build we are definitely playing around with the ratios quite a bit, and you could see that we're not playing every single Sacred Beast. We dropped down the opening of the Spirit Gates down to 2 copies, and even the Dark Summoning Beast is no longer focusing on the first effect and only going with the second effect. We're also going to be playing 2 Fallen Paradise. That still hasn't changed, so that's pretty good at least, but even so, It doesn't actually go any deeper than that, aside from the fact that we're still playing a terraforming just to get it out as soon as we can. Technically, you could actually take out the terraforming. This is a 41 card deck, and if you're playing 3 copies of Chaos Summoning Beast, it shouldn't be too difficult to just add your Fallen Paradise. Now moving on to get more cards to the graveyard aside from Kuri Bandit, and we are playing quite minimalistic monsters as well, so a Reasoning would be fantastic, and we are also playing here 2 copies of Monster Gate as well. They're very nice, they're very easy, and let's say you actually did your summonings of your Dark Beckoning Beast, or maybe even your second summon of your Dark Summoning Beast or Chaos Summoning Beast, they could be used as tribute fodder for the monster gates to just get them to the grave anyway, and they have their own grave effects. Then you just mill up your cards, which is mostly spells and traps, which will definitely work out for your deck because the traps will fuel up for Uriah's attack. That goes without saying that we're also going to be playing 2 copies here of Foolish Burial Goods. Gets your cards to the graveyard and it just accelerates it. Definitely fantastic. We're also going to be playing here 2 copies of Magic Planter. We are playing plenty of continuous trap cards, so with that being said, I think 2 Magic Planters won't hurt at all. Now I must admit, I've seen many different deck profiles on Uria, and a lot of them have actually been very different. Every single person who has actually profiled Uria does it in such a different way. Whether it's playing different cards, whether it's playing different traps, yes, everyone plays their own traps. Some people focus entirely on a pure trap deck, focusing on trap monsters. That's not what I'm going to be playing here. This deck just doesn't work in that particular sense. This deck focuses more on the Sacred Beast build still, because I wanted to stay true to the Sacred Beast itself and stick to their playstyle, and changing it into a trap deck completely was just taking it away from the pure essence of Sacred Beasts, which I still wanted to keep to. So with that being said, I did see several deck profiles that did focus too much on just the traps alone, and it no longer felt like Sacred Beast. It just felt like Uria was more of an accessory to the deck, which is not the intention. You want Uria to be the main focus. So with that being said, I am definitely going to be playing a very different trap lineup to a lot of the other deck profiles that you might have seen. So to begin, we're playing here 3 copies of Hyperblaze. It doesn't really matter about playing all of it. Of course, it is really amazing purely for Uria, and fortunately this is a Uria deck. This card is actually just not good at all in a regular Sacred Beast deck, like one that focuses on Hamon, Raviel, and even the full variant. But when it's actually played in a Uria deck, it's absolutely amazing. But even with 3 copies, you're maximizing out the consistency, but you could also just ditch it to the grave whenever you need. I'm surprised to see that a lot of people stop playing the 3 copies of Awakening. It still provides you a negate. If you have Uria out on the field, and if you have an Awakening, you could still stop your opponent, so why not just play the card? I was so surprised to see that so many decks stopped playing the Awakening and still played the Hyperdrive. It just didn't make sense. You may as well just play this because you could stop your opponent so much. Speaking of stopping your opponent, I'm playing here 2 copies of Anti-Spell Fragrance, and I'm also playing here 1 copy of Skill Drain. Skill Drain is at 1 anyway, so you can't do anything, but we are playing 11 spells, so it shouldn't hurt too much to play the Anti-Spell Fragrance. Even then, if you have Monster Gate or Reasonings or even the Foolish Burial Goods, you could still just ditch off the Anti-Spell Fragrance to the graveyard and it wouldn't be an issue at all. For the final traps, we're playing here 3 copies of Metal Reflect Slime, and we're also playing here 3 copies of Crackdown. Of course, at this particular point, you guys can choose to play whatever trap cards you actually want in the deck. I just prefer to play these particular cards because I believe that they are all good. Make sure that they are still continuous trap cards, because firstly, having as many continuous trap cards allows you to actually summon out Uria really easily. Keep in mind that they can be face down, because if you have Hyperdrive, or is it Hyperdrive? Hyperblaze, sorry. If you have Hyperblaze, you could essentially allow them to be sent to the graveyard face down, which could definitely bring out Uria in a quicker way. But with that being said, that's pretty much it for the main deck. Let's move on to the extra deck. Now on to the extra deck, we're going to be playing here one copy of the Trilogy. Now I am playing here Super Polys in my deck, and since we're also playing here the Metal Reflex Slime, it could technically act as a level 10 monster in some sort of sense. Together with the Uria, you could really just get into this card. It's possible, it's not necessarily the most common thing to happen, but the fact that the possibility can happen at all, it's just worth playing at least one copy of it. However, since we are playing the Metal Reflex Slime, I'm also playing here 3 copies of the Egyptian God Slime. I'm actually very pleased that I even have 3 copies of this. This card has actually been going up in price, so very happy to have even 3 copies of it. And I figure it actually works out in this particular deck quite a lot. But of course, for the more standard cards that you guys might expect, we're still playing these typical trains. Definitely just really amazing cards, of course. Yeah, fantastic cards, definitely just the utilities that you could easily go into. Now as for links, we are again playing more utility, so Anima and Link Karibo, both of them you could actually go into with your Chaos Summoning Beast. For Link 2s, we're playing Pentastag. Keep in mind, you're bringing out all of these big monsters like Uria, you're playing potentially the Trilogy as well, so the Pentastag allows you to do piercing damage. That's an OTK. And of course, we're also playing here Akashic Magician. You bounce back your opponent's monsters, you're clearing their board, you're allowed to go for an OTK. Absolutely amazing. And of course, same thing applies with the Triple Burst Dragon. Acts as like a secondary Pentastag, does piercing damage itself. And finally, we are playing here some Link 4s just in case we could actually go into them, but it's up to you what you actually want to play. The Nightmares are definitely a viable option, so feel free to play those if you actually need to. It's a matter of personal preference in terms of the extra deck, though it's not like it's something that you need to rely on anyway, so there's no issue there. However, this was pretty much it for the deck, so I will be doing some test hands for this, both going first and second. Although this deck does prefer to go second, it still will definitely demonstrate what you could actually do in different circumstances. So I do hope you guys enjoyed this, and I hope you all have a fantastic day. I'll see you all next time.